or mastery of their own lives and the decisions that affect their lives. Law is a process, and LEP is an important process in a democracy where we have 77% of people whose incomes are nothing to write about. It is a process by which the poor ensure for themselves both legal protection and advancement of their interest. It is a goal for the purpose of poverty reduction and development. Legal empowerment has many components, one of which is legal aid. Actually, legal empowerment is broader than traditional legal aid. It includes the rights enhancement through law, by rights awareness, rights enablement, in assisting the poor to use rights, and rights enforcement. The poor need legal empowerment so that they can contribute to a change in the system. Legal empowerment is not only an arm to defend against oppression, but more importantly, is a means of positive affirmation in a democracy. There are various principles which are enshrined in the Constitution and various international documents and covenants to which India is a party, which speak about the obligations of government as well as society to ensure that the poor are not discriminated. But is it in the concept of individual rights that we look at the poor? Or is it that we are looking at the poor as a class that the law must be capable of effectively delivering access to justice? According to me, as of today, our jurisprudential focus has been on the individual rights of the poor. But I think it is more important that if we have to make a meaningful change, it must be shifted from the individual to the classes. I also believe that when there is selective enforcement of rights due to power imbalances, then the poor actually get defeated in any kind of faith and affirmation in the rule of law. We can never separate the legal empowerment program from human rights because of the process involved and their expected outcome. I believe that unless we give voice to the poor, and unless they acquire a voice, who need information, education, organization, representation, we are not going to be able to claim to be a successful democracy which is capable of giving equality to larger sections of people. The LEP must also be linked to poverty alleviation in terms of empowerment of women who can have greater control over their lives, who can protect their rights to work, who can participate in political life, who can inherit property. I also believe that in spite of various economic experts who have spoken about the increasing GDP, the trickle to the lower middle classes and the poor always leaves a lot to be desired, and it is still a major reality which we have to reckon. When we look at three important initiatives which are being taken, one is the contemplation of a national food security bill which promises 25 kilograms of food grains to the poor at 3 rupees per kilo. It could, in fact, usher in a major change. It would be one of the first pieces of legislation which directly enforces the directive principles of state policy. The National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005 is again an important and innovative piece of legislation. It obviously does not suffer from the same leakages as, shall we say, the normal bureaucracy-controlled programs have done, but in spite of it, it is necessary that it is adequately funded and effectively implemented, and hopefully there must be greater accountability, and there must also be a convergence between the NREGA as well as the other schemes, the development of land, the water resources being effectively utilized, and the benefits to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. One of the biggest problems in India is the unorganized sector. You must know that when we get up in the morning, for the 6 hours before we get up, it is the unorganized sector who get us our water in time, who get us our milk, who get us our tea, who get us everything which we need for the day, including the newspaper. But where is their identity? Where do they sleep? Under the flyovers? And what is their identity? They rely upon a jumble of electricity bills, ration cards, voting cards, and shall I say most importantly, letters from local officials. I hope the UIP program will help the poor to access the benefits of various government schemes with greater ease and should eliminate duplicate and fake identities. Legal empowerment strategies will include, obviously, judicial innovations. It would include public interest litigation. It would include human rights education and the provision of legal services, including paralegal services such as counseling, use of community, and advocacy skills. In order to enable the poor to assert their rights, to enter into a legally protected society with the mainstream, and to be able to do so with sufficient dignity, they must be helped to develop legal resources, a functional knowledge of relevant law, and they must have the skills to use and develop law in order to promote and protect shared group interests and rights. I believe that to encourage legal access, we must reform the existing legal system. This will involve a clear communication of the rules, including elimination of language barriers. Secondly, the decentralization and the deconcentration of the justice system to allow geographical access to the law. And thirdly, free legal advice and free legal representation before the courts for the poor. Before I conclude, I wish to say two important things. One is, I believe that we are at a critical juncture. We have a crisis of individual conscience, and the crisis is one of interconnectedness, and the crisis is for assuming responsibility for poverty. I think as a society, we must assume responsibility for those who are poor, those who are underprivileged, and those who are denied access to justice. Individual cases of media coverage helping the poor to find a voice is not sufficient. It needs to be done in larger cooperative movements. The second point which I wish to make is whether we look at it purely from the evolutionary struggle as a democracy or from the evolutionary struggle of becoming the larger middle classes, we must remember that we have a side which is independent and outside us. And unless and until we are capable of hearing that voice at reasonable intervals, we would be undermining our own societal structures. There is a lot at stake when there is poverty. And I think what is at stake is actually not simply access to justice. I believe that democracy itself is at stake. Therefore, I share optimism. I feel positive psychology in my bones so that I can wake up every morning and set about what I think needs to be done. But having spoken about it, I cannot say that the world will quickly change overnight. It needs many shared responses. It needs great initiatives. It needs innovation. And above all, it needs to be entirely unorthodox. And if we are prepared to be unorthodox and confront problems and find solutions, which are going to be based on the equality principle, not, shall I say, charity and philanthropy, I think we would be making a great change. Hopefully, this is an insight which all of you would be able to share and should be able to view as a part of your own successful outreach as a responsible civil society. Thank you.